The best thing for the New Orleans Saints to come out of Sunday's loss to the San Francisco 49ers was Spencer Rattler. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I'll tell you the one trap the New Orleans Saints absolutely cannot afford to fall into, why the Saints defense desperately needs a rebound and how they can get it. And we're going to kick everything off with three things that went well for the Saints and three things that didn't go well for the Saints, leading off with quarterback Spencer Rattler, who was a big-time highlight for New Orleans. We got that coming up for you all on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One of the best things to come from this game for the New Orleans Saints was quarterback Spencer Rattler, who, as we highlighted in our recap episode, our quick recap episode last night, completed 25 of 34 passes. That was a career high 73.5 completion percentage. Threw for 207 yards, threw for 3 passing touchdowns, which is also a career high, his first ever multi-touchdown pass game, and had a passer rating of over 118, a career high in terms of passer rating as well. This was Spencer Rattler's best effort, a 3-touchdown day that should have been a 4-touchdown day, but a missed connection between both Spencer Rattler and Chris Olave. Spencer Rattler saying that he located that pass too far to the left, should have given Chris Olave a better opportunity to catch it. But at the same time, Chris Olave probably should have caught that. You expect your number one guy to still come down with passes like that. But in any case, a missed connection there that could have been 4 touchdowns for Spencer Rattler, loosely speaking, right? That would have been early in the game. Who knows how that would have changed the course of how the rest of this game would have gone. But Spencer Rattler was a big-time highlight in this matchup. Completed, I think his adjusted completion percentage was over 80% because there were 3 drop passes, including that touchdown pass and 2 others by Juwan Johnson. He had the sack fumble at the end of the game, but that was a quick pressure that they had called, a true progression on that, or pure progression on rather, that wasn't really able to take any shape because of how quick that pressure came, even though Spencer Rattler tried to step up. So a rude ending, if you will, for that game for him. But overall, fantastic performance. I got 2 other bests from this game before we get to 3 worsts for this game. The other 2 bests for this game were Carl Granderson, as well as Kelvin Banks Jr. Carl Granderson, 2 sacks in this game, 3.5 sacks on the season through just 2 games. He had 5.5 sacks last year. So he is doing the thing that he did a couple years ago where he had the strong start. Last year, he kind of had the stronger finish, but the big thing that he missed in both those years was a dip in the middle. And so now you're seeing a really, really strong start for Carl Granderson. He's got to be able to carry that through the midsection of the season. But if he can do that, he's going to end up having a pretty spectacular season here in 2025 if he keeps anything close to this pace. I'm not even talking about a sack a game at this point, which would give a player 17 sacks in a season. That would be incredible. But if he can average 3.5 sacks over 5 games, that ends up putting him in a pretty good situation as he continues to move forward. So awesome stuff from Carl Granderson, who I thought had a strong day. Also added a trio of tackles for loss as well, and an additional hit on Mac Jones too. Kelvin Banks Jr., on the other hand, I guess it depends on who it is that you're looking at, but when it comes to Pro Football Focus, they only have 1 pressure surrendered by Kelvin Banks Jr., and it was a hurry. And so that was a really strong game from him, and is and has been a really strong start to his career. I love the fact that he was the first player out there after the late hit on Spencer Rattler to get in the face of those defensive players, giving them, kind of showing them that he has his quarterback's back. I thought that was a really, really good showing of just, camaraderie, teammate, all that good stuff. But then also has continued to perform well. If you look over at Next Gen Stats, who's a little bit more kind of loose when it comes to the amount of pressures, what it takes to notch a pressure. He showed up with 4 pressures in the game, but from what I saw, not really a bad game at all from Kelvin Banks Jr. And so those are the three bests for me: Spencer Rattler, Carl Granderson, Kelvin Banks Jr. I could add to that list as well: Alvin Kamara, 99 rushing yards on the game, so on and so forth. So Devaughn Vele catching his first touchdown pass. There were some good things, but I want to dive into now. We highlighted our best. Let's go to our worsts. And so to me, some of the worsts for this team, tackling was absolutely a big part of it. Double-digit missed tackles yet again in this game. Third down defense, very ugly. And then I'll add here the tandem of Isaac Yiadom as well as Pete Werner. I'm not saying that they were the worst players on the field. I wouldn't use worst when talking about a player, but their performances I felt were the weakest links for the New Orleans Saints, combined giving up over 10 catches and over 100 passing yards. The two of them were in dire straits all throughout this game. And so I think this is starting that conversation for when the New Orleans Saints start to look at the younger guys that they could potentially turn to. You have Quincy Riley waiting in the wings. You have Danny Stutzman waiting in the wings, although Danny Stutzman has mostly been learning behind Demario Davis, not really learning Pete Werner's spot. But in any case, will there be a point at which the Saints have seen enough and decide to change over to their young players to at least see what they have in their future? There's a couple different reasons why doing that could make a lot of sense. The first of which is to see what you have in your players that are a part of your future. There's no doubt about that, right? That's what this season's all about. Figuring out the bedrock upon which to build the foundation. Then once you have the foundation built, then you begin to build the success. They're not even looking for the foundation yet to build the success. They're looking for the bedrock to build the foundation first. And so you got to get a look at as many of these young players as you can, as long as it makes sense and when it makes sense. And so a guy like Quincy Riley makes a ton of sense. You need some help taking the football away. The Saints have not effectively taken the football away. They've not been an opportunistic defense, although Chris Rump did get that strip sack on Sunday up against Mac Jones and the 49ers that was recovered by Demario Davis. That turned into a touchdown drive. So points off of turnover becoming very important, or always very important. But, coming into light in that matchup, can Quincy Riley help you there? And you also have the benefit of potentially not, but potentially still getting a compensatory, that was a weird way to say that, compensatory fourth round selection if Isaac Yiadom doesn't play enough snaps as a defensive starter on your team that it erases the Paulson Adebo fourth round pick. The Saints have continuously traded away future draft capital. Could be an opportunity to recoup some draft capital, although you would never make the decision upon who plays and who doesn't play based on that. It's just a little bit of a side note there. And so the Saints could decide that they want to get a look at Danny Stutzman, a secure tackler, that they want to get a look at Quincy Riley, a guy that gets very active in the run game, even as a corner, and can take the football away, because those are places where the Saints have struggled. Third downs, as well as forcing turnovers, as well as missed tackles. Those were some of the other parts of the worst for Sunday's game. Those are two guys that could potentially help you out in both of those categories. So we'll see if the Saints ever get to a point anytime soon where they decide that they want to get a look at the young guys as the veterans are struggling. The New Orleans Saints defense desperately needs a rebound next week. We'll discuss how they can get it and why they need it. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends over at PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call actually pays off. I love PrizePicks because of how easy it is to use. Here's all you got to do. You get signed up, and then you choose more or less on 2 to 6 players and their stat projections over at PrizePicks. If you get those right, you're turning your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It's super easy to get your entries in. So if let's say next week it says Spencer Rattler, 187.5 passing yards, you pick more or less. You do that for 2 to 6 players, so you can be walking away with some real prizes there. And hey, next week, by the way, Patrick Mahomes only needs 1 passing yard. So take the more on half of a passing yard in order to get a free win there as well, and a little bit of a bonus square, max discount, if you will. Download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints defense desperately needs a rebound, and it's going to be challenging to get it up against the Seattle Seahawks and the Buffalo Bills, who are both right around the corner. I want to dive into what and why, what happened, and therefore why the New Orleans Saints need this rebound and how they can get it, which is mostly going to be just addressing the reasons that they kind of need this rebound in the first place. But let's dive into it. So a couple of things that I want to highlight. We mentioned double-digit missed tackles for the second week in a row for this New Orleans Saints defense. Now, missed tackles are going to happen in the NFL. The Saints actually forced the same amount of missed tackles on passing plays as the San Francisco 49ers did in that Sunday matchup. But for New Orleans, oftentimes their missed tackles somehow seem to happen in pivotal moments or seem to happen in moments that exacerbate the issue for New Orleans. And New Orleans has some issues over on the defensive side of the football. Now, they've been getting home, right? 8 sacks over the course of the first 2 games. That's an average of 4 sacks per game. That's a really, really good situation to be in as you start off the season. However, the pressure has been inconsistent and the coverage has been inconsistent as well. Coverage in the middle of the field in particular was challenging for the New Orleans Saints when it came to their defensive play up against the 49ers. Kellen Moore highlighting that Mac Jones caught a lot of those in-breaking routes in a lot of his passing attempts and targeting and moving the football. And that was a part of what gave the Saints a lot of grief. And so the Saints did not cover the middle of the field well, is what that says to me. But the other side of it is that there were a lot of times to where the Saints had a stop or had a moment where they could have made a play at the catch point and let tacklers run through their arms. And this has been a consistent issue for New Orleans. This is not new for 2025. This is a consistent issue that they have had. And so that's going to be a big thing that they're going to need to clean up, is the missed tackles, making those plays. The other thing is going to be penalties at big moments. The Saints allowed 2 third-down conversions to take place because of penalty over on the defensive side, including one, by the way, that took place after a third-down false start moved San Francisco further away. And in each of those instances, San Francisco had some good drives and put some points on the board in one of those occasions as well. And so this is, again, a part of the issue for New Orleans, is that not only is it just that they have the defensive penalties that extend the drives, but a lot of times they have the defensive penalties that extend the drives that turn into scoring drives. And that's the really tough one. New Orleans had one to where they went from a third down that could have been, or should have been rather, I think it was a pass interference penalty on Isaac Yiadom, if I remember correctly, or some kind of illegal use of hands or holding, whatever it might be, some coverage penalty on Isaac Yiadom on a play that he otherwise broke up. Then they gave up a 3rd and long, and then that turned into a scoring play for a touchdown on a catch and run to the tight end by Mac Jones. And so it's those types of moments that just kind of compound and make things worse and worse and worse. Then you add on to, I mentioned the missed tackles earlier. One thing that I didn't mention was over 150 yards after catch for the Saints. In fact, for the 49ers. In fact, more than 50% of Mac Jones's passing yards came after the catch. He didn't complete any passes 20 or more yards downfield through the air. He had a big 48-yard or 40-plus yard catch and run touchdown to Juwan Jennings, but that was under 20 yards at the catch point. And that was another one of those plays where, Pete Werner was out of position underneath, or maybe looked like he was slipping or had stumbled or something like that, but it turned into this big catch and run. But that's another place where you can see things like missed tackles really popping up. And then those plays, they really get to you when you have those penalties on third downs, or you surrender big third downs, and then they lead to those scoring opportunities. Keeping with that theme, the Juwan Jennings catch and run came on the same drive that there was a 3rd and 10 where Pete Werner was beat by Christian McCaffrey running a comeback over on the right sideline. And so it's those types of things that end up kind of creating a little bit of the frustration that you can see and sense from this team. And of course, for those that are watching this team. So now, how do they get better in these situations? Well, it's going to take time. I mean, it's just like I said last week when the Saints missed, 13 tackles or 10 tackles, missed 10 tackles a week ago and had 13 penalties a week ago, that it's not something that just gets fixed in 1 week. And now here we are again, 7 penalties, several costly penalties in key moments, and then again, double-digit missed tackles. It takes more than a week to fix these things. If you couldn't fix them and you couldn't address them over the course of training camp, where you're not allowed to tackle each other, which is just ridiculous, then you get into, or not ridiculous, but it's a big part of the reason why teams often miss tackles in the first month of the season. It's why offensive line play is typically down in the first month of the season. So that's something to watch when it comes to how impressive the Saints pass rush has been in terms of getting to the quarterback, although their pressure percentages are not as high as I'm sure that they would like. But anyway, for the New Orleans defense, it's all about improving those things, and that's going to take time. And so the Saints will need to increase the discipline that they're playing with over on the defensive side, and that's going to help them out when it comes to the penalties. That should help them out when it comes to tackles as well. But the tackling part of it might just be who's missing tackles and who needs to sit down, right? Like the Saints are not in a situation to where they need to be nice. They're not in that part of their lifespan. They're at a point right now where they need to kind of be cutthroat, right? To where they need to say, hey, this is an issue. You need to get it fixed, or you're being moved to the bench, or moving a player to the bench if they're not able to get the thing done. I'm not advocating necessarily for any one person to see that or anything like that, but the Saints should be hard-nosed around this. The Saints should be hard on their players around this, and there should be accountability. You can't have accountability from week 1 to week 2, but if you're seeing repeated issues weeks 1, week 2, week 3, you can start to bring that accountability to task for sure, without a doubt. And so I think that that's got to be the next thing that the Saints kind of have to start to figure out. They got to get this defense figured out, and the defense needs to rebound. They had a strong beginning of the game last week, followed by a strong closing of the game last week, but then a tough middle of the game where they allowed 4 consecutive scoring drives. That was up against Arizona. This week, up against San Francisco, they didn't really have a strong moment, right? They had a strong first drive. They had a few strong drives, but for the most part, San Francisco got what they wanted. And bear in mind, this was a San Francisco team that had no Brock Purdy, that had no George Kittle, that had no Brandon Ayuk, for majority of the game had no Kyle Juszczyk, and also had a Christian McCaffrey that ran for less than 100 yards. The Saints did a pretty good job there on defense, but it's the rush and it's the coverage that didn't necessarily get the job done, and in particular, the coverage being probably the place that struggled the most. And that is where the New Orleans Saints desperately need improvement as they move ahead through the next few weeks. I've said before, we're not going to overreact to the Saints not playing strongly in the early goings of the season as they're learning everything and as everything is new. But it doesn't mean that we can't point out when things didn't go right. And on the defensive side, a lot didn't go right. And that side of the ball desperately, desperately needs a bounce back. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints have a trap that's staring them in the face that they absolutely must avoid. We have that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We've all turned to some funny places for advice. The barista, the barber, maybe in my old days, not anymore. Random folks that you end up having some conversations with and end up trauma dumping on. I've totally never done that before. But not everybody is the right one. So when it comes to real support, that's where BetterHelp comes in. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 10 years of experience, BetterHelp will help you find the right match, someone clinically trained and credentialed to guide you through some of life's tough challenges. I've used BetterHelp quite a bit over the course of the past few years, and I will say they have helped quite a bit. So as the largest online therapy company and provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. To find one, head over to BetterHelp today. Our listeners will get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at Upside. If you're like me and you drive around a lot, you should absolutely go and get the free Upside app. You can get it through Apple, the App Store, as well as the Google Play Store. Basically, it's an app that allows you to be able to get cash back every time that you fill up at the pump. So it makes it feel like you're not paying full price at the gas pump anymore, which is a big relief for a lot of us. And it's going to allow you to start earning cash at the pump today. So go and check them out. You can also use our limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN. You get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas that you already needed. So if you're making trips from New Orleans to Metairie, New Orleans to Baton Rouge, don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now and use that limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN to get a limited time 25 cents back per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints have a big, scary trap set right in front of them that they need to do everything within their power to be sure that they do not walk right into. We appreciate you very much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what you're getting here on the Locked On Saints channel. You can also get more in our insider program. Just text WHODAT to 504-285-7473. That includes film studies, as well as Q&As, one-on-one conversation with me, and much more. The New Orleans Saints have a big, scary trap set in front of them, and they cannot walk right into it. In fact, I think I have a sound effect for this. I think it's this one. Yeah, spooky. So the Saints cannot allow themselves to mistake good for great. The Saints cannot allow themselves to mistake positivity for elite play. The Saints cannot allow themselves to mistake progress for production and producing a championship level team. You're going to see the New Orleans Saints do this one thing a lot over the course of the year. Sure, they're going to highlight the positives. They're going to tell you who played well. They're going to tell you what stood out to them. They're going to tell you where they've made progress. And look, all of that is warranted. They deserve the opportunity to do that as they go throughout this 2025 season. However, none of that means that this team is a finished product. And none of that means that there aren't improvements to be made. The Saints did some good things on Sunday up against the San Francisco 49ers. We talked about Spencer Rattler's good day. We talked about Carl Granderson's good day. We talked about Alvin Kamara. One name that I didn't bring up that I'd love to bring up is Demario Davis, who just continues to play incredibly well at his age, and playing like the way that Demario Davis plays football and the success that he finds would be great for a 27-year-old linebacker, let alone a 36-year-old linebacker. So there are positives for this team. However, there are still a lot of opportunities to get better, things that need to be improved, and things that aren't going well. And all of that's fine. Like, there's going to be a balance there. We've said this over and over again here on the show. This is a multi-year process. For instance, the Saints right now lack a couple different things. They lack an edge rusher that puts fear in the opposing offense. I think Carl Granderson is off to a really good start. Maybe he develops there. Maybe Chase Young becomes that guy once he gets back out on the field. But using a prime draft pick or bringing in a prime free agent at edge rusher should be a part of the New Orleans Saints plan in 2026's offseason. The Saints could use a big-bodied, physical, true alpha number one wide receiver. They don't have that guy on their roster right now. They don't. And so can they go and get that guy? They could be that possession, lean on him, I don't want to say anything crazy here, but 8-9 target receiver per game or whatever, right? A big number one guy, the Teteroa McMillans of the world, the former Michael Thomas of the world, like that type of receiver. The Saints don't have that. They could use that. Saints clearly can use some help with their coverage on the defensive side as well, whether that's at corner or at safety. They could use some help on their second level too. Now, maybe they'll find some of that in guys like Quincy Riley and Jonas Sanker and Danny Sutzman, but there's time before they have to get that figured out. And so when they look at where they can go next, until there's something proven at those positions, those are places where this team can improve. Finding another complement to Alvin Kamara is still very much a quest for this team. And so there are opportunities for this Saints team to get better. And the worst thing that they can do is mistake their positives for true progress and overvalue the process as if it is representative of producing improvement, right? And producing wins. There's no substitute for producing a win, right? And so the Saints can't get to the point to where they go, you know what? We've been in a lot of these games, had the football with the offense within a single score with the opportunity to either tie or take the lead. Feel pretty good about where this team is. I think things are just going to get better. They can't do that. They have to look at continuing to improve what they're doing from a schematic standpoint. They have to look at opportunities to continue to improve their talent, their personnel as well. And to the Saints' credit, they've already shown a propensity for exactly that and an awareness for exactly that. They went out and got Devaughn Vele, who caught his first touchdown on Sunday. They needed a big body wide receiver. They went and got one. Then they went back to the wide receiver group again and said, you know what? There's a player that the Saints really liked in the draft from last year. There's a player that Kellen Moore really liked in the draft last year with Philadelphia. And they went and got him. And Jalen Polk, they traded to bring him here to New Orleans, sending a 2027 sixth-round pick to get him and a 2028 seventh-round pick. And so if it doesn't pan out, it's a sixth-round pick, not a big deal. But if it does pan out, great move, right? So the Saints have already shown that they're looking at those types of opportunities to continue to improve and continue to set themselves up for their future. That's what this season is all about. But as of right now, the Saints are doing a very good job of that. The issue, or not the issue, but the concern is that moving forward, if they end up playing this game tight with Seattle next week and then, come up with a win against the Giants 2 weeks later, they can't walk away from that breathing a sigh of relief. They can't walk away from that breathing thinking that they have a finished product of some sort, right? Everything about this is seeing what's good and then working to turn it into great. Nothing is great right now. Coming up tomorrow, we'll dive in further into this New Orleans Saints loss, go into the numbers to help to tell the story. Don't forget to come and check us out on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every Monday through Friday. We appreciate you very much as always. Make it as a part of your day, part of your routine for saying yes to me in the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. I trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.